Hello and welcome to the Game Lore Archives. In our first episode of the series, we discussed how the prime evil, Tathamet, was destroyed when the universe was created. His corpse would eventually become Hell, the birthing ground for all demon kind, and today we'll discuss this in much more detail, particularly the 7 greater evils. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe for our weekly videos and maybe check in on our Patreon page for a larger input on the channel.
The realms of Hell are populated by Hellspawn, so physically, demons are kind of a hard race to describe, as there are thousands of different subspecies that all just kind of fall in the demon kind umbrella. Each subspecies have different shapes, sizes, colours, and different physical attributes and magical abilities, and if we were to discuss every different archetype of demons individually, we would literally be here for months. So instead, I'll list the traits that they all share. So demons are born with a deep mistrust for everything, including members of the same race. And because of this mistrust, smaller wars are a common sight across the planes of Hell. Fighting, if a human fights any demon, it's not just a physical battle, but it's also a mental one. So any survivor of a demon attack will suffer from psychological scars that will probably never fade. Demons never sleep and often hoard gold, even though they have no use for it. The final thing that they share is that they are physical beings, which means that their bodies will remain after death, while their spirit is sent back to the Black Abyss. The spirit will then eventually find its way back to Hell and will be reborn. And in fact, the only way to truly stop a demon once and for all is to kill its physical body and then trap its soul.
And this is completely the opposite to the angels that we discussed in the last episode, who are manifestations of light. So their bodies completely vanish when they're killed and they won't be reborn.
And even though demons have attacked Sanctuary multiple times, to this day, most humans don't really believe in demons and think they're nothing but a myth. However, others know better and even actively summon demons. And it was one of these summonings that led to the discovery of Sanctuary, although that's a story for another episode.
Unlike their physical attributes, which are all over the place, their attitudes and beliefs are largely in line with the master that they follow. So, for example, Baal is the lord of destruction, so his army relishes in the destruction of everything, while Mephisto, on the other hand, is the lord of hatred, and so his army are bred to hate all living beings.
So, Hell itself is split into 7 main realms, with then multiple little smaller outer realms surrounding them, as opposed to Heaven, which is a static place, which is always the same. Hell is constantly in motion, and its realms change in shape and size, depending on its ruler's power and the influence at the time. Each of the primeval's realms is named after what they're the lord of.
So Belial, the lord of lies, rules over the realm of lies. Diablo, the lord of terror, rules over shock horror, the realm of terror.
Not the realm of shock horror.
No, not the realm of shock horror, but shock horror, it is the realm of terror.
So, knowledge on these realms themselves are scarce, and very few beings have entered and lived to tell the tale. However, we will discuss what we do know of each realm when we discuss their corresponding rulers. The multitude of the smaller outer realms are the only parts of Hell not directly controlled by one of the primevals. Instead, each of these smaller sections are ruled by massive beings called Mallet Lords, which I'm sure you'll remember if you played Diablo 3. And each of them have their own small personal army working towards their own personal goal. But as you see in Diablo 3, there's a lot of Mallet Lords.
Those things are annoying.
Yeah, and that's why they are one of the strongest things in Hell other than the primevals.
The other 7 realms are ruled over by incredibly powerful 7 greater evils. These greater evils all originated from the prime evil Tathamet, and when he died each of his heads grew into one of the greater evils. The 4 weaker heads became the lesser evils, and the 3 strongest became the prime evils. We'll start with the 4 lesser evils in their realms of Hell. Just remember going forward that despite the name, there is absolutely nothing lesser about these beings. They are all incredibly powerful creatures.
And even managed to exile the prime evils from hell at one point. So, before I continue the script, I do have a slight confession to make for this. The footage of this episode was shot on my own with a sorceress after not playing this game for a long time. The footage is exclusively going to be seeing a glimpse of Andariel, Duriel, and everyone else, and me dying a lot of the time. With the bonus of Mephisto, who didn't kill me that much, but you don't get that much time on screen because I'm carrying the corner chucking spells at him.
Just running away.
Really sorry for the bad footage, guys. I'm good at lore, not necessarily the gameplay side.
Gaming.
It's, yeah. I think there might be some good footage of Bale.
Yes.
Some necromancer came and helped me, and he was good.
Yeah.
So I think I did alright with Bale.
With someone to protect you.
Yeah. I'm not normally a sorceress, as you know. I'm normally a druid. It was a first for me. I didn't know any of the spells or builds, and I should have gone with druid. Sorry, guys.
So the first of these lesser evils is Andariel, the Maiden of Anguish. Andariel is the only female lesser evil and rules the realm of Anguish. The realm of Anguish is a place of pure psychological torture, where feelings of guilt, regret, and self-loathing are constantly bombarding anyone unlucky enough to find themselves there.
Like you nearly said.
I nearly said lucky. Yeah.
You were like, wow, this sounds like my kind of place.
First class ticket on my way. Commonly, people are eventually so crippled with guilt and self-loathing that they will seek out to physically punish themselves and willingly hand themselves over to Andariel's twin, Duriel. Like all demons, Andariel is not only physically attacks her foes, but also attacks using their own emotions against them, stirring memories of loss, sadness, betrayal, regret, and guilt within them. She relishes in their suffering and feeds off their anger and despair. Andariel excels in manipulation, setting up scenarios that twist her victims' mental states to the point where they internally tear themselves apart with their own emotions. Andariel is often considered the most social of the prime evils and hates isolation as she's sustained by other people's suffering. Andariel was originally one of Diablo's closest confidants until the Dark Exile took place and she fed on his misery.
So many consider Duriel, the Lord of Pain, to be Andariel's twin, largely due to their two realms of torture, largely overlapping, and also physically overlapping as well. But where Andariel specialises in mental torture, Duriel's expertise is inflicting physical pain. Duriel loves to torture and inflicting horrific levels of pain. The screams of his victims are like music to him, and the sight of agony is almost sensual. To the point of if no one's around for him to hurt, he will self-harm to fulfill his desire to inflict pain. Duriel rules over the realm of pain. This realm is the most commonly depicted by humans as it's the easy concept to grasp. The realm of pain is said to be one large cavernous area just filled with increasingly gruesome traps and torture devices and the deeper you go in, each one seems to inflict more and more unimaginable pain. You think it can't get any worse, and then it does. The realm is just littered with demons being held captive and tortured for Duriel's own sadistic pleasure. It's also said that the other 6 evils will avoid this realm at all costs. They don't want to be there. It's that nasty. And it's this where Andariel's victims, now broken mentally, often seek solace in the physical pain Duriel inflicts, and actively seek out this realm to escape the mental punishment.
Belial, the Lord of Lies, draws pleasure from something more unique than mental or physical torture. He revels in trickery, setting up situations and then waiting for that moment when the penny drops and his victim realises that they've been lied to. Belial is very rarely seen in his demonic form, preferring to possess influential figures in Sanctuary and manipulate the population without them realising. When people do see him, he appears as a gigantic monster towering over everything around him. Whether this size is just another illusion, though, we don't know for certain. Belial rules the realm of lies in a more inactive role compared to Andariel or Duriel. At first glance, it appears to be a beautiful paradise. The further you explore, however, it soon becomes clear that this initial picture of tranquility was just bait, giving way to dungeons that bend reality itself. Staircases looping back on themselves or ending in perilous drops. Fresh fruit and succulent meats are scattered around the dungeons for the trapped hungry souls, only to turn rotten once touched. Impossibly beautiful women wander the realm trying to seduce passerbys, only to unveil themselves as hideous old crones. Every time his victim realizes they've been tricked, Belial's laugh will ring out across the realm until eventually all his victims' perception of reality is so twisted that they no longer trust their own senses. Belial's biggest weakness, however, is that he occasionally traps himself in his own intricate web of lies.
And I think that would be an awesome little survival game for them to do. It's not a main game.
Just
You're
like
in his realm of torture, you've got to escape, and if you pick up rotten fruit, you can actually eat it. If you pick up nice food, but obviously you've got to. Sometimes they change it up, and you've got to work out. I think that would be quite a cool little survival game.
Hear that, Diablo 4?
This is what we want. Azmodan, the Lord of Sin, rules the realm of sin, and that's one of the most populated realms of hell. His realm is warm, seductive-looking warren, and contains every pleasure a person can indulge in. His realm slowly spirals ever downwards, slowly becoming a labyrinth of pleasures to get lost in. Eventually, his victims will become overwhelmed with pleasure, sated to the point of revulsion.
It's like when you overeat your favourite food until you feel sick. Kind of like that, but with every single pleasure.
But of course, they never want to leave it because every whim is fulfilled. And eventually this mix of revulsion and pleasure starts to take a mental toll, leading them to a rapid descent into madness. I mean, so far it sounds like the place I'd want to go if I had to pick.
Yeah, if I had to pick.
If I had to pick. So, Azmodan's appearance is a combined visual representation of the 7 deadly sins he commands. He's a large and slow demon, emphasising the sins of gluttony and sloth. His insect legs are decorated in treasures showing greed, and the trophy of his kills representing wrath and pride. Azmodan is unparalleled in battlefield tactics, and is considered the best war tactician, far surpassing any other demons.
Including any of the other primevals as well.
Yeah, so his command of the battlefield has actually led to many victories against the angelic host. When he fails in battle, he learns from those failures and adapts his tactics, creating new monstrosities to help his cause. The most well-known example of this is the winged demons. Most demons couldn't fly, and during early battles with the angels, they were easily outmaneuvered by the enemy. So Azmodan retreated and began breeding winged demons. These new creatures were capable of ripping angels apart, so he began his attacks anew. While most of the primevals have a desire to be the sole ruler of hell, none have this desire more so than Azmodan. In fact, it was Azmodan's planning and cunning which led to the Dark Exile being such a success.
The Dark Exile is an event where the 4 lesser evils banish the 3 primevals from hell, in an event that we'll discuss in a later episode.
And because Azmodan rules over essentially the 7 deadly sins, his army is led by the Sin Lieutenants. Some of them you'll recognise, not all of them we know. The ones that we do know and you'll probably recognise is Gorm, the Lord of Gluttony, is obviously the fat guy. Cynthia, the Mistress of Lust. And one that some of you will recognise, I know Joe and me have only fought him once, is Vidian, Lord of Envy. We took him on when you were living here. Paula and me went to that new area which was like the Castle of Blood, and it had that new boss.
Yes.
That's the Lord of Envy, and that's one of his lieutenants.
That vampire guy, was it?
Yes. Vampire-looking guy. They're the only ones that we know and see in game. I presume there's a lot. Well, obviously,
4 more. Yeah.
Azmodan is a clever manipulator and is always plotting for power. He's the most charismatic and the seductive of the great evils, and loves vices in all of its forms. He's a master of temptation and loves to make people betray their beliefs and principles for their own pleasure. Despite his great powers, he does tend to become a little overconfident and arrogant.
Which can be seen in Diablo 3 when he constantly pops up and tells the Nephilim exactly what he's about to do, which then leads directly to his defeat.
Awful idea.
It's a terrible idea.
But despite this flaw, he rarely fails, other than the time.
Other than the one really important time where he should not have failed.
Yeah. And when he does fail, those responsible for that failure are punished severely, such as the demons known as the Fallen Ones, which I'm sure you'll recognise.
Yes.
They've been in Diablo for ages.
Ages.
The little red and blue guys that run around. I always used to call them Noblins.
Noblins. So the Fallen Ones are a common sight throughout Sanctuary and Hell, coming in a variety of shapes and sizes. They're a tribal-like race and a pack animal, and these packs mostly comprise of weak imp-like creatures led by a shaman. Some packs also include stronger overseers, which drive the imps on, making them less prone to running away, and some packs even have a dog-like creature. However, the Fallen are not a natural race, and once used to be Azmodan's strongest and most trusted demons, tasked with secret missions Azmodan could not openly involve himself in. At the beginning of the Dark Exile, Azmodan first attempted an usurping of the 3 primevals, which involved these demons. They failed and were cursed by Diablo, being twisted into these small creatures that are so common today. Their failure provided Azmodan key information that helped him successfully banish the greater evils in the end. However, as punishment for their failure, he refused to reverse the Fallen's curse, leaving them in their new bodies as a continued source of amusement for himself. The Fallen's only pleasure besides killing is breeding, which is why they're becoming a more and more common sight around Sanctuary, with multiple different tribes. It's lucky that these tribes don't have the inclination,
or possibly the intelligence,
to band together, as they could easily overwhelm small cities.
And that's it for the 3 lesser evils.
Good maths there.
Good maths. Quick fire maths. And that's it for the 4 lesser evils, which brings us on to the 3 primevals, the deadliest and most nefarious beings in all of creation. Mephisto, Lord of Hatred, is the oldest of these 3 brothers. The realm of hatred is the capital of hell, meaning it's always the most heavily populated realm. Many of the demons residing there will create factions based on their own beliefs and ideologies. These factions constantly disagree, and their conflicting beliefs cause constant infighting, betrayal, and most importantly, hatred, which Mephisto watches over for his own amusement. Mephisto is considered the most intelligent greater evil, a master at manipulation, but he frequently manipulates his own brothers to do his bidding. The reason Mephisto is so successful at manipulation is that he provides his target with multiple opportunities to pursue their own ambitions, but bending their own goals ever so slightly to align with his own. So instead of forcing them to do something they don't want to do, he twists something they do want to do to work for him, which is pretty clever. Mephisto's greatest ambition is to manipulate entire societies against each other, and he will seed distrust between friends and family wherever he goes. He views the emotion of hatred as a tool, and it's a tool he wields with the utmost precision. He loathes everything, particularly angels. When he first learned about the humans on Sanctuary, he immediately saw them as tools waiting to be forged with hatred to be used against the angelic host. Mephisto's hatred is so corrupting that after his soul was trapped in a soul stone, it was given to the Zacharoon faith to look after.
Something we'll go into more detail in a future episode.
But once it was there, his essence and hatred oozed throughout the land, corrupting the entire church.
Baal, Lord of Destruction, is the most brash and reckless of the primevals. Unlike many of the other primevals, Baal has no desire to rule over hell, instead wanting to destroy all of creation. Killing is a joy, and he frequently feasts on the flesh of blood and of his enemies. As with most demons, his army, the Legion of Destruction, follow his ideology to the letter, making them one of the most bloodthirsty legions in hell. They are often the first legion to appear on the battlefield, wanting to rip through their enemies limb from limb. Their usual tactic is to surround their enemy and attack from all sides simultaneously.
I love that that's a tactic for him then. So the tactic is, we're going to attack.
Just dogpile.
From everywhere.
When not in combat, the demons choose to train themselves in the art of battle. Because of this, Baal breeds his army with strength and agility in mind. Because of Baal's clear tendency to attack and destroy, many people believe that he's the easiest primeval to understand and predict. And while it might be true that he's easier to understand, that does not make him predictable. Baal is by no means dumb and frequently shows smart tactics and cunning to achieve his goal.
And that leaves us with the youngest of the greater evils, the titular character, Diablo, Lord of Terror. Regardless of him being the youngest, Diablo has frequently proven himself to be the deadliest of all of the greater evils. And this power is not necessarily due to strength alone. Diablo has two abilities that seem to make him a far deadlier foe than anything else. The first is his control over the emotion terror. Much like Mephisto using hatred as a tool to turn people against each other, Diablo sows the seeds of terror wherever he goes. Unlike Mephisto, however, Diablo chooses his targets carefully to spread fear more effectively. The best example of this is King Leoric and the town of Tristram. Diablo's soul was trapped deep under the town, and his influence crept upwards. Whereas Mephisto had corrupted the entire church above him, Diablo chose to only affect Tristram's ruler, King Leoric. The king slowly became more and more paranoid, accusing close friends of betrayal and killing loved ones, convinced they were going to get him. The town began to fear the Mad King, and Diablo grew strong through their fear, all by only manipulating one person's emotions, so retaining most of his powers and staying strong. And his second strength is his mind. Now, Mephisto may be the most intelligent of the primevals, but Diablo seems to have, and this isn't in lore, it's just what you can see, but he seems to have the bigger picture in mind. So most of the other primevals seem to have, quite small-minded and focus solely on their immediate goal, but Diablo just has contingencies on contingency plans for failure. So, for example, Asmodan, he fails, he retreats, learns from his mistakes and makes a new plan. Diablo will plan for both his success and failure years in advance of this actually happening. And this may not seem like much, but this ability has literally saved him from death on more than one occasion.
Now, we have mentioned a couple of the prime evil's weaknesses as we went on, but their singular biggest weakness is their almost complete inability to work together. The legions of hell are stronger than the forces of heaven by far, and that is a fact. The only reason that heaven can fight them off is because heaven works together as a team with a single goal in mind, in complete contrast to the primes bickering and fighting and to be hell's sole leader. If they banded together, they could win the eternal conflict once and for all, and this has been proven on a couple of occasions.
The first example occurred in a battle called the Fifth Battle of the Diamond Gate. This is the only battle where the primevals worked together, and they managed to fight the angelic host back, finally tipping the scales of this never-ending tie. However, the second that they were through the gate and into heaven, Diablo proclaimed that he would be the sole ruler of heaven and hell, and he had lied about the joint rulership the whole time, which then caused his brothers to turn on him, which then caused the Unified's armies to just break out in a massive civil war right in the middle of the enemy territory, which then allowed the angels to just push them out with relative ease.
And the second time heaven fell was very recent, when Diablo managed to become the singular prime evil as Tathamet had once been. With the combined powers of all 7 greater evils, he easily outfought the angels with his army and destroyed the diamond gates of heaven. He would not have been defeated if it hadn't have been for the Nephilim warrior and using the power to defeat him once more. Regardless of the circumstances, it's clear that if all the forces of hell, prime evils, lesser evils and the Mallet Lords all joined forces, it's doubtful anything could actually stop them.
And that concludes our research on the 7 greater evils and all the realms of hell. Really hope you enjoy the episode. I had loads of fun doing this one. You know me, I love a good bad guy. You're more into angels.
You prefer your bad guys, don't you?
Yeah, you prefer your good guys and your angels and your wings. And it's all about that blood and guts, dude. But obviously, we want this research to be discussed with you guys. So I'll leave it with this. Who's your favourite greater evil and why? We've seen all of them through Diablo 2 and 3. Who would you like to see in Diablo 4? Let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I personally would probably love to see, not so much which evil I'd like to see. I'd like more different battles. I loved the Belial battle in Diablo 3 because it was different.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see a bit more differences in those fights.
See, I would actually like in Diablo 4 to go into hell, because we've been in Sanctuary.
Hell. That's in Diablo 2, just because you've only got to Act 1.
I know, but...
You go into hell in Diablo 2.
Do you go to all of the realms?
Not all of the realms,
yeah.
No.
But it'd be good to gut through all the realms of hell. I think that'd be quite cool.
It would. Let us know what you think, guys, and thanks for watching.